Good morning. I'm Allison Muhlendorf, the Executive Director of the Alabama School Readiness Alliance. Welcome to our Pre-K Task Force Recommendations Launch Webinar for 2021. I am extremely excited to have two of our Pre-K Task Force members here with me today. We have Pre-K Task Force Co-Chair Bob Powers. Wave to everyone. Bob is the president of the Eufaula Agency, a real estate and insurance firm in Eufaula, and he is also very active with the Business Council of Alabama, Alabama Power Board, and many other organizations throughout our state. Thank you, Bob, for co-chairing our Pre-K Task Force. You're going to hear from Bob in just a few minutes as he announces the recommendations for 2021. We also have a longtime Pre-K Task Force member and former legislative budget chairman, Jay Love, with us today, and he's going to provide advocacy tips for you along with me toward the end of the webinar. Jay is doing government affairs and contract lobbying with Jay Love Consulting. And he's working for our partners at Voices for Alabama's Children and devotes a lot of time to helping us advocate for high quality pre-K with the legislature. And he is also the chairman of finance for the Business Education Alliance. At this time, I am going to turn it over to Pre-K Task Force co-chair, Bob Powers, and he is going to take it from here. Thanks, Bob. Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you, Allison, and thank everyone who was on this call, this meeting. Your interest and active support is needed and appreciated. As Allison mentioned, my name is Bob Powers, and I'm the co-chair of the Alabama School Alliance, Readiness Alliance's Pre-K Task Force. On behalf of myself and my task force co-chair, Mike Luce, I am excited to announce that we are recommending that state legislators support Governor Ivey's request to invest nearly $25 million in new funding to help expand Alabama's first-class pre-K program to more families next year. The Pre-K Task Force consists of more than 60 leaders from the state's business, education, civic, medical, legal, philanthropic, military, and child advocacy communities. We were formed in 2012 when Alabama's first-class pre-K program was funded at $19 million and served only 6% of the state's 4-year-olds. Our goal then, and today, remains to encourage state lawmakers to grow the first-class pre-K program until every family that wants to enroll their 4-year-old has an opportunity to do so. Thanks to Governor Ivey's leadership and the leaders from both parties in the state Senate and House, we're nearing closer to that goal. Today, Alabama's first-class pre-K program has a funding level of $126.8 million. Nearly 40% of the state's 4-year-olds are currently enrolled. That's a 667% increase since we started in 2012. But our work's not finished. New funding is desperately needed. Many communities across the state turn families away because there aren't enough classrooms. The interested families are not able to have their 4-year-olds enrolled. It is easy to see why families are anxious to enroll children in first-class pre-K, and here's some of the data. According to the Public Affairs Research Council of Alabama and the University of Alabama at Birmingham, children who participated in Alabama's first-class pre-K program are outperforming their peers in reading and math in every grade. This is true regardless of a student's income level, ethnicity, or zip code. What this research shows is that our pre-K program is working. It is closing academic achievement gaps and better preparing students for success in school. So it's a shame that less than half of the state's 4-year-olds even have a chance to get in. As my co-chair, Mike Luce, often says, investing in early childhood education is not only the right thing to do, it's also the smart thing to do. Economists estimate that every dollar invested in first-class, high-quality pre-K return at least $7. So every dollar invested, we're getting a return of at least $7. And that's why business leaders like myself and Mike are some of the strongest pre-K advocates in Alabama, and also why the Business Council of Alabama has endorsed our pre-K task force's recommendations. If the state legislature approves Governor Ivey's first-class pre-K funding request, the Alabama Department of Early Childhood Education will be able to add 207 classrooms serving an additional 3,726 students. Another step forward. But more first-class pre-K funding is not the only thing that is needed to ensure the state's early childhood education efforts remain among the nation's best. In total, the pre-K task force is this year recommending that state leaders implement 8 policies, from prioritizing a diverse delivery grant structure for first-class pre-K to prioritizing expansion in communities with a high number of at-risk students. New this year is a recommendation for state lawmakers to also support investments in child care quality. Task force members recognize that in order for Alabama to reach our pre-K expansion goal, we cannot ignore the needs of child care providers. New investments in Alabama's child care infrastructure will help prepare children for pre-K while supporting a diverse system of quality providers for future first-class pre-K expansion. I would now like to turn it back over to Allison, who will share more details of the Task Force 2021 legislative recommendations, as well as tips for how you can join us in advocating for pre-K expansion. Allison?
Thank you so much, Bob. I think I was on mute.
Yeah.
Hope you can hear me now.
Yes.
Good. I am delighted to follow up and show you our pre-K task force recommendations on our website and where to find them and how to take action and help us advocate for more 4-year-olds to have access to high quality Alabama first-class pre-K. Bear with me now while I share my screen. This is our homepage, alabamaschoolreadiness.org. And we keep all of our news items in this slider that you see on our website. There is a slider that refers to our 2021 pre-K task force recommendations, and you can click right there from the slider to get to them. And you can also find our pre-K task force recommendations on the About drop-down menu on our website, ASRA pre-K task force recommendations. And you'll also see we have a link on that menu for you to find our full list of pre-K task force members. I'm going to take you to the recommendations now. As you can see, this is just a visual representation of what Bob shared. And this will be sent as a one-pager to every member of the Alabama Senate and the Alabama House of Representatives as they work on the upcoming Education Trust Fund budget. And the bill number for that is Senate Bill 189 this year. It's going to start in the Senate. So as Bob said, our recommendation that the legislature support Governor Ivey's proposal to increase first-class pre-K investments by $24.4 million will help the State Department of Early Childhood Education add at least 207 new first-class pre-K classrooms in a variety of settings. The department is putting a big emphasis on the diverse delivery system for first-class pre-K, and they are looking to add classrooms in private childcare centers, nonprofit childcare centers, faith-based childcare centers, community organizations like YMCAs, and community action organizations that run Head Start. Also public schools, which are the largest provider of first-class pre-K across our state. Even universities can apply. So if you have any questions about applying for first-class pre-K funding, you can go ahead and contact us. You can do that on our homepage, alabamaschoolreadiness.org, or you could actually find the application for first-class pre-K funding for new classrooms at children.alabama.gov. And I'm going to go ahead and put that in the chat so that you can go and find that application for funding. Because it's really important that a lot of programs apply for these increased funds so that they can be part of those 207 new classrooms that we hope will be added across the state. Funding applications are due March 12th. So go to children.alabama.gov to find that information. And again, contact us if you have any questions, and we'll connect you with the right people at the Department of Early Childhood Education. Back to our recommendations. You'll see in the thermometer icon that, the pre-K task force recommendations are part of a long-term plan to ensure that all 4-year-olds in our state have access. And it'll take more than $200 million to make that happen. And the governor's budget proposal keeps us on track to get there within the next few years. As you scroll down in the recommendations, you see the information that Bob mentioned, that pre-K in Alabama has been ranked #1 in the nation for its quality for 14 years in a row by the National Institute for Early Education Research. The things that they look for when they rank states in pre-K quality are things like teachers with bachelor's degrees in specialized training in early childhood education, assistant teachers that have a child development associate credential, monitoring and coaching for teachers to support their professional development, small class sizes, which have been very, very helpful for the program during the pandemic in both virtual and in-person settings. Those are just some of the things that make this program so high quality. But right now, only 37% of 4-year-olds have access, and we're working to increase that number. There's an infographic here on the pre-K task force recommendations publication on our website that talks about the data that shows that first-class pre-K graduates are doing better than their peers in reading and math. And you can also find that information on our website under Alabama pre-K results. It has now been published in an international scientific journal. So we know that the continued study of Alabama pre-K outcomes is being done with the highest research standards and is valid. And it shows that the effects of pre-K last. If you look down beyond the infographic, you'll read the full recommendations of the pre-K task force. Because in addition to pre-K funding, the pre-K task force proposes, as Bob said, 8 recommendations to make sure that our state is implementing pre-K expansion while maintaining the program's benchmarks for quality and the important accountability structure that the program has. And as Bob said, this year we have added a very important recommendation that state lawmakers support investments in childcare quality, because investing in the childcare infrastructure in Alabama will not only help prepare children before they get to pre-K by enhancing the quality of childcare programs that serve infants through 4-year-olds, it will also help prepare providers and get them on that ladder of quality through the state's Quality Stars program and other quality investments, so that they can be ready to be pre-K providers and apply for the funding and take advantage of this and for the children in their communities. The full recommendations are right here, and there's also a link to pre-K task force members. And you can also click the infographic on our website to download the one-pager. This is what is going to every state lawmaker in our state. It has everything that you read and a link to the full recommendations, as well as the logos for many of the organizations, businesses, education groups, and community groups that are represented on our pre-K task force. And again, you can find the full list of pre-K task force members on our website as well. I am seeing some activity in the chat. Thank you so much. Please do chime in on the chat. Let us know that you're here and where you're from. And if you're trying to be part of pre-K expansion, we would love to hear from you. We also would love for you to please put your questions in the question and answer function, and we will go ahead and answer those toward the end of today's call. Now I'm going to shift a little bit from our recommendations to how you can help us make them a reality. It's so important that all voters, all people in Alabama share why pre-K is such a priority for you, for your family, for your children and grandchildren, or just for your community. Because we know, as Bob said, that pre-K expansion benefits our whole state, not just the families that are participating in the program. We know through longitudinal studies that children that attend pre-K are more likely to be reading by 3rd grade, more likely to graduate from high school, more likely to attend college and be successful in their career, and to have stronger families than children that didn't have pre-K. We also know that the children in the studies that did not have pre-K were more likely to commit a crime than the children that had pre-K. And they were more likely to rely on costly social welfare programs. That is why economists estimate that every dollar invested in a high quality pre-K program like Alabama First Class Pre-K yields a $7 return. That's a huge return on investment. Pre-K benefits everyone. And Jay and I are going to talk about the issues facing the Alabama legislature, and one of them is prison funding. There are massive proposals for expanding prisons in our state, and the way that we start addressing that is an early childhood investment. It is much, much easier to prepare a child for success than it is to fix a broken adult. We know pre-K works, and we hope you'll help us advocate. It's really easy to do that. You can go to alabamaschoolreadiness.org, and I'm going to go ahead and type that right into the chat box so that you can follow along with me. And by the end of this Zoom, you will have been able to send an email to your state senator and your state representative, encouraging them to support Governor Ivey's budget proposal for pre-K, and send a thank you note to Governor Ivey for proposing the $24.4 million increase. We're going to be able to do all of that before we're off the Zoom today. So when you go to the homepage of our website, you'll see a tab called Get Involved. and you'll just click Take Action. You can also just scroll down to the Take Action button on our website as well. That will take you to our Action Center. And as you can see, there are 2 active advocacy alerts on our website ready for you to fill out. Click the first one, and it will ask you to contact your state senator and state representative. And if you don't know who they are, don't worry, because we make it very easy for you. We have a pre-populated message in here thanking them for their support of pre-K and asking them to support the governor's budget request. And then you can add your own personal message about why pre-K is so important to you. And right now I'm signed in, but if you're not signed in, you just put in your prefix, first name and last name, your email address, and your home address. It's really important that you use your home address so that we can match you with your state senator and representative that represent you in Montgomery. So when I go to mine, here, let's see. Anyways, it's so easy. I don't even need to show you. But another way that you can contact your representative and senator is to go back to our Take Action page. And one thing I strongly encourage all of our advocates to do, whether you're a seasoned member of our pre-K task force or you're just new and getting started in contacting your state lawmakers, is that you follow up your emails with phone calls. When you send emails through our system, you will get a confirmation email that shows you that you contacted your lawmaker. Once you get that, that's your reminder to follow up with a phone call. So right here, the way to find the phone number for your lawmaker, I'm going to go ahead and type in my address, is to go to this Find Your Officials portion of our Take Action Center. Enter your home address, and it will start with the president and your US senators, your US representative, and then if you scroll down, you'll see who represents you at the state level, from the governor to the lieutenant governor, down to your state senator and representative. Right now, where I live in Montgomery, my state Senate seat is open, so it only shows my state representative, Tashina Morris. I click right here and I open her up and I see all of her contact information. And so that is the email address and the phone number that I encourage you to call weekly throughout the legislative session and just say, I want to make sure you received the email I sent you. I'm a big pre-K advocate and I thank you for your support. The key is to be very thankful and polite when you call, because this is an issue that whether they're a Republican or a Democrat, state legislators in Alabama have been supporting it for several years. So we do not need to push them. We do not need to prod them. We need to thank them and ask them to continue their support. So you can use the script from your email that you sent to encourage your legislator on a call to support. And what they do with that is they have staff that will tally up kind of the phone calls and the emails that they get on certain bills. So again, with this, and you'll see it in the text of the email, you want to be sure that you're referring to Senate Bill 189, which is the education budget in Alabama that has the pre-K funding increase in it because it was in the governor's budget. So I'm so glad we had the opportunity to go over our tools today. They're free and it takes less than 5 minutes to contact your state senator, your state representative. And again, we also have a very quick email prompt for you to thank the governor for her recommended funded amount. I'm just looking at my notes to make sure that I didn't forget anything. I think that that's it on my end. I also encourage you to sign up for our advocacy alerts and pre-K post e-newsletters. You can do that here on the dashboard of our Take Action page. And please also send this to any groups that you're involved with, that you're a member of. If you're a member of Rotary, I would be happy to come and do a Zoom presentation. And we also have members of the pre-K task force that love to do those kind of presentations all across the state. And now it's really easy to do that via Zoom. So I'm happy to come talk to any community group that you think would like to have this information, because the more people we bring into our advocacy coalition, the more lawmakers are going to hear from their voters that they support this issue. Children can't vote, and it's up to us to be the loudest voice and the most positive voice to continue to encourage this issue to be a priority in our state. Now I'm going to bring back pre-K task force member Jay Love. I'm asking him to start his video again. Fantastic. And I'm gonna go ahead and try to ask him to unmute. While he's doing that, Jay, you're a lobbyist in Montgomery, and you were a former chairman of the House Ways and Means Education Committee in the State House of Representatives. In fact, when I started working here, I lobbied you, and you were a big champion of pre-K funding, and we're so thankful for that. And you've been a strong part of our coalition ever since. What would you say to the advocates that are on today, in addition to what I mentioned, on how they can make their voice heard on this important topic?
Yes, so as you stated, Allison, it's always important to start with your personal representatives and senators. I would encourage you to start at that point, reaching out to them, but also expanding your network of influence. And many of the people on this call know other senators and representatives that are not their own personal representatives in Montgomery. And so I would encourage you to reach out to those individual members. If you feel comfortable calling on the phone, you know, this is a challenging time for advocacy because of the restrictions of COVID and the limitations on being able to get into the State House right now. Normally we would have a big, celebration day where we bring everybody in from across the state, and you go in and meet individually with with different state representatives and senators, but obviously that's not an option this year. So reach out by phone call. If you have a text message relationship with individual members, that's always a good way to communicate with individual members. And I always tell people to start off by saying thank you. The expansion of pre-K has enjoyed wide bipartisan support within Alabama's legislature, and it's been a focus of both the majority party and the minority party and legislative leadership over the last several years. So just about anybody you speak to is going to have a positive reaction to pre-K and want to continue to implement increased budgets so as to any 4-year-old that might want to attend a pre-K or their parents, they will be able to. And that has always been our goal, is to get to that point. And this is another wonderful step in that direction in Governor Ivey's proposal of increasing almost by $25 million the pre-K budget line item. So thank those members for their support in the past and what they have done to be advocates for pre-K and kind of gotten us to where we are today, but also encourage them to continue to support the governor's request for an increase of $25 million. The good news is the budgets are in very good position, especially the education budget, which is what pre-K is funded out of. And because of years of responsible budgeting, if you had asked me or told me 11 months ago when we were just entering the lockdown that we would be looking at a $400 million increase in the education budget this year, I would have been very reluctant to believe that. But because we've had responsible budgeting, we are in a very good position budget-wise to fund an increase. So thank those members of the legislature for their support, but also encourage them to support Governor Ivey's pre-K increase. It looks as if the budgets may be moving sooner rather than later, at least the education budget. As Allison stated, it's starting in the Senate this year, and then we'll go to the House after it makes its way through the Senate. They started about 2 weeks ago, this regular session. They're 6 legislative days through. They've got a total of 30 that they can meet. I would anticipate within the next 2 to 3 weeks to begin to see at least a budget in committee, and we'll see where it goes from there. So any opportunity you have to reach out and touch, if you happen to see them in your home area, to advocate for the governor's increase, I think we'll fall on friendly ears. But it's always good to hear from your home folks that you represent, that you support or what you support. So I would encourage you to use that kind of tactic.
Great, thank you so much, Shay. I'm going to bring Bob back in to our conversation if you don't have anything else to add at this time.
No.
Okay, Bob, I'm asking you to unmute and start your video again. I'll try to do it for you. Looks like you're going to have to do it on your end, Bob. And while you do that, I am going to look at some of the great questions that we're getting. Thank you guys for putting your questions in the Q&A feature. Let's see. All righty. The first question is from Joe Morton. He asks what percentage of students participating in pre-K is considered full participation or full funding. And I'm going to go ahead and take that question. Joe, we did a lot of homework at the beginning of the pre-K task force back in 2012 when the group first came together to study what other states have done to expand pre-K and what is considered pre-K for all or universal pre-K access in a state. Pre-K is voluntary because it builds on the existing system of early childhood that's already out there in the state. So that's really important when you're thinking about pre-K, as it's voluntary, but we don't want anyone to be turned away when they're at full access. So we estimate, based on our consultation with the National Institute for Early Education Research, that 70% of 4-year-olds will be the take-up rate at which no one is turned away in our state, kind of based on factors in our state, the existing private programs that are there, and some families that will want to keep their children home until they're kindergarten age. So if at that point there are still families that wish to enroll, I think we can make a great case that we could go up to 80%. Oklahoma, Washington, D.C., and some other programs like West Virginia even are getting, close to 80% or past that. So we'll reassess that once we get to 70%. But right now, only 37% of 4-year-olds in our state have access. So we have a long way to go before we reach that goal. All right. Do our other panelists have anything to add to that question?
It's always been a function of dollars to get to full implementation. I think there's a commitment from the governor's office and from the legislature to get to that point. And we've had a lot of discussions about exactly what that number looks like in terms of a budget request. And I've always said it will end up being whatever it needs to be, because the legislature and the leadership have committed to getting it to where any 4-year-old that wants it can have access to it. And so the progress we've made over the last several years, and the progress I think we will continue to make over the next 3 or 4 years to get it to that full implementation, is something that will change the state remarkably for the better. And once we get to the point of full implementation, that number will will be whatever it needs to be. If there are people out there on waiting lists, then I think the legislature will continue to fund increases to make sure there are no more waiting lists. And that's what we all want.
Exactly. Thanks, Jay. And we have two questions from reporters. Caroline Beck of the Alabama Daily News says that we mentioned supporting investments in childcare quality. What does that look like exactly? And do we want more funding to open up more daycare centers? And how much funding do we want to go toward this? And Anna Claire Vollers has a similar question, asking if we could elaborate on the detail of what kind of investments the task force would like to see from state lawmakers when it comes to supporting childcare quality. Now, this is in a complementary way to pre-K expansion. And I've gone ahead and unmuted my colleague, Stephen Warner from Voices for Alabama's Children. Voices is leading a childcare coalition that the Alabama School Readiness Alliance and all of our partners are participating in, that is delving deep into this issue. And I will unmute Stephen and ask him to do his best at this time, at this early stage, to answer these two questions. Stephen?
Allison, can you hear me okay?
I can.
Good. Good morning, folks. My name is Stephen Warner, and I am with Voices for Alabama's Children, as Allison mentioned, and I'm delighted to try to answer this briefly. So Voices is working with our Department of Human Resources on a ask of the legislature to support a currently federally funded program called Quality Rating and Improvement System, QRIS. It's in Alabama, it's called the Alabama Quality Stars. Right now, they have to spend DHR has to spend a portion of their federal subsidy funding on improving quality. This system is implemented in almost every state that there's a quality rating and improvement system. Ours has been around for a number of years, but the participation rate has not been where it needs to be. This is a scale of 1 to 5 stars that evaluates on an objective level the quality of the childcare center. And right now, there's fewer than 100 of our childcare centers that are participating. When talking to directors, the significant barrier, in addition to the procedural steps or the realities of going through another review process, is that the incentives that they are awarded are not sufficient to the work. If you are a 5-star center and you have over 100 children, it's about a $2,000 award at the end of the year. And to use a good Southernism, the juice isn't worth the squeeze for many of the directors that are already stretched thin. So we recognize that for a lot of reasons, we need high quality childcare accessible to our parents where they are. And this is the only system in place currently to evaluate what quality looks like. Voices, along with our childcare allies in the Childcare Coalition, will be asking the legislature to appropriate money to supplement or layer on top of the federal dollars that are already appropriated. We don't just get to go tell the feds that we need more money, although clearly that's something we should be doing. We need to be able to utilize a system that's already in place. QRIS already exists. It is already well established. We have a really good framework for it, but we need to incentivize more centers to participate and put money where our mouth is, or our values are, and removing some of the barriers to centers moving up in that quality system. We are letting DHR do most of the work on evaluating what that would cost, and then the childcare community will be the advocacy community will be going to the legislature to ask them to appropriate money for that. We don't anticipate it's a particularly expensive ask in year one, because as I said, there's only about 95 centers that are star rated, but our goal is that more centers participate and we begin to move and improve the quality of our centers and family childcare across the state. The system as it exists is available to both family childcare and a center-based childcare, and we want to see all of them be awarded or rewarded for moving up in their quality so that they're able to provide higher quality for the children that are in those centers and homes.
Thanks so much, Stephen.
Yep.
Just to add on to that, and Bob can probably elaborate, our pre-K task force has had several conversations about childcare over the last few years, because we have noticed that as pre-K has been expanding, we haven't seen the participation among childcare providers. that we would have liked to. And we realized that's because of kind of the long-term drastic underinvestment in quality in childcare writ large. Simply put, what parents can afford for childcare for their young children is not what it costs to run a high quality childcare center. So there are some federal subsidies, as Stephen mentioned, but they don't go far enough and they don't cover all children. So Quality Stars is one of those initiatives that will help childcare so that we can bring up a rising tide lifts all boats. And we thought pre-K would do that alone. But Quality Stars is kind of a step ladder. And the program is going to be improved quite a bit if this new funding is provided. It's a step ladder to getting programs, the investments, the staff that they need, the low ratios that they need, and the expertise and training that they need to then eventually also add pre-K to their centers and make the whole center a model for quality. It requires public funding on top of what parents can afford.
I'll be glad to add to that, Allison. The child care system is not only an issue for parents and quality for developing children, it's an issue for business. And the issue before COVID hit was that we had a number of Alabama's potential workers or people who'd been in the workforce who weren't out there working now because they couldn't afford proper child care. This issue, before COVID, we were doing regional meetings with the Chamber of Commerce of Alabama Association throughout the state to present issues that we've gotten from businesses where they were having a hard time recruiting qualified workers. They were there in the community, they were there available for the workforce, but they couldn't participate because there's not sufficient quality childcare that was affordable. So that issue started before COVID. It's only gotten worse since. And you don't have to look very far that the makeup and demographics that's taken place in our workforce. Both parents working is not unusual. And quite often the time requirements, even now with parents working at home, is a challenge in many cases. So we've had to address it. There was a chamber in the Wiregrass area that had to literally help set up daycare because the hospital workers didn't have daycare for their children because the children were out of school. Some of the daycares had closed. And so it was impacting the healthcare system. So there's a whole range of this that makes it very reasonable and beneficial for our state to engage in this effort.
Thanks, Bob. Yes, investments in high quality childcare are a very important complement to investments in high quality pre-K. And our partners at Voices for Alabama Children have a multi-issue advocacy agenda that includes pre-K, childcare, home visiting, and other important issues. And you can learn more about all of those and sign up to advocate more broadly with Voices at www.alavoices.org. So that's alavoices.org. Is that right, Stephen?
That is correct, Allison. And if I could add one other brief thing, if we're going to talk about pre-K, it has proven again and again to be such a fantastic corrector of inequities for children coming into school, preparing them. Brains don't start developing at 4. Brains start developing in utero, and we've got to invest in high quality childcare in order to prepare children to be ready for pre-K and kindergarten. So it is both a access quality, but also it's early education. We can't separate those facts. So it is an important investment in early learning starting at birth. So that we can't, these are not separate issues. They are part of a continuum that helps prepare children for school.
Thanks so much, Stephen. I'm looking at the questions. Looks like we have one or two more. I see that we have a question about the current bill from Peblin Warren, State Representative Peblin Warren, that makes kindergarten universal. How would that affect pre-K enrollment and completion? I'm going to go ahead and allow my colleague from A+ to talk if he wants to about this. If you don't, or you're not in a position to talk, Matt, that's totally fine. But I want to share that one of the reasons that the Alabama School Readiness Alliance has been so successful pushing this pre-K boulder up the hill, if you will, is because we're a partnership of 4 statewide organizations at our core. And those 4 partners are A+ Education Partnership, which advocates for great schools for every child; Voices for Alabama's Children, which we already talked about; Alabama Partnership for Children; and Alabama Giving. And so all of our other partners have broader agendas, and we all collaborate to focus on advocating for pre-K. So the kindergarten readiness bill is really more in the A+ Education Partnerships bailiwick, but I do see it as a positive, although the Alabama School Readiness Alliance has not taken a position yet on the bill. We have to look into it a little bit further, but a couple things I do know from research I've done in the past is that more than 90% of all families put their kids in kindergarten. It's actually, I think, closer to 95 or 96% statewide. So we don't have a huge, tremendous problem of children not accessing kindergarten, but in the past year with COVID, there was a major issue with families keeping their children home, and you can understand why. So I think the bill will make it so that you can't just go right into first grade having not gone to kindergarten, and I think that would help our educators quite a bit. So that's what I know about the bill, and I welcome others on the panel or any of my colleagues from A+ to raise their hands and speak if they'd like on that topic. Otherwise, we'll go to the next question. And Matt, if you could type, Matt or Mark, if you could type in the A+ Education Partnership website so people can learn more about your legislative agenda, I'd really appreciate that. In addition to pre-K, A+ Education Partnership is also advocating for investments in summer learning and after school, and looking at ways to address the COVID learning interruptions that have happened over the past year for so many children across our state.
And I apologize. Allison, can you hear me now?
I can, and I'm sorry to put you on the spot, Matt, but I wanted to get good information out if I could.
Absolutely. And A+ Education Partnership is in full support of this new kindergarten bill. We think it is a positive step, especially in these times of the pandemic, where we see that approximately 3,700 students are missing from our anticipated kindergarten enrollment. So we think this is a positive step in supporting those missing students in their return. I will also live chat our website so that the policy priorities can be reviewed.
Thank you so much, Matt. Do our other panelists want to add anything to that question?
This is Stephen with Voices. I spoke with Representative Collins, who chairs the Education Policy Committee this morning. She's made this a priority bill for her, and there's a substitute that is been passed out of committee. And so I'd encourage you to go look at the substitute, and there's been a lot of improvement in that bill. And there will be a pathway so that children who are homeschooled for kindergarten or coming out of places that don't qualify for that will be able to take an assessment test that would allow them to enter kindergarten if they're developmentally ready. The goal of this bill is that every child enters first grade ready to learn and as close to par as they can. And if not, that the teachers have the data they need in order to be able to effectively teach that child. So this is definitely a bill that is being changed as it moves through the process. And it is one that Voices is in support of as well.
Thanks, Stephen. We do have time for a couple more questions. We have a question from Melissa asking, does the task force have any recommendations for increasing first-class pre-K participation in community-based early care and education programs? Yes, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again so that I can show you that important part of our recommendations. Thank you for asking that question because it's really, really important. First class pre-K has always been meant to have a diverse delivery program, meaning that classrooms are located in public schools as well as private existing early childhood education environments, such as childcare, for-profit, nonprofit childcare settings. And if you go down to our full recommendations, you'll see that we have full recommendation number 2, that we support, the pre-K task force supports the continued use of that diverse delivery grant structure for first class pre-K that creates high quality state-funded pre-K classrooms in a variety of settings, and that we recommend revised strategies and policies by the Alabama Department of Early Childhood Education to strategically place those in areas with lower rates of pre-K access and in ways that result in more programs being placed in community-based settings. And I actually just got an announcement from the department earlier today that they are hosting 3 webinars. I think it's Thursdays, tomorrow and the following 2 Thursdays, for community-based providers on how those programs can gain access to the program. So we never want to see first class pre-K replace the existing early childhood infrastructure. We want it to build on the infrastructure that already exists. So I'm going to go ahead and put in the chat. I can find the chat, how you can access those webinars that the Alabama Department of Early Childhood Education is putting on to bring providers, private providers, childcare programs into the system. They're doing more of this than ever before. We've really pushed them to do this as advocates, and they have responded. Here's the information for Gay Finn at the Office of School Readiness in the Alabama Department of Early Childhood Education. She's the person that you should talk to if you want to participate in any of those information sessions about how to apply for first class pre-K classroom funding. And again, the application is due March 12th. You can also contact me, and you can find my information on our website, and I can connect you with the right people if you're having trouble, getting the information that you need about getting a first class pre-K site. And I will say, if you go to that website, children.alabama.gov, they also have registration information for parents and grandparents to go ahead and pre-register children right now for the upcoming school year. The child just has to be 4 by September 1st. So that's a really good website to have. And I thank you so much for asking that question and allow me to go into more detail on that. Anything else? Oh, I see that Sam Adams, who works with the Alabama Department of Early Childhood Education, has just typed into the chat. Sam, can you make that public to all attendees, that the webinars by the Alabama Department of Early Childhood Education will be held at noon on February 18th, February 23rd, and February 25th. Go ahead and contact Gay Finn in that department, and I have put her information into the chat if you want to learn more about that. It's very, very important. Okay. Would our panelists like to add anything to my comments on diverse delivery?
I think the diverse delivery component of pre-K has been one of its principal assets in terms of getting buy-in from legislators. So I'm very encouraged that the department wants to continue to allow for diverse delivery, and that is a selling point in my mind when you're talking to legislators.
Thanks so much, Jay.
It's also important. It's also important for parents. Every parent, when they're looking for child care and education, they each come to that decision from different sets of backgrounds and assessments. So having the diverse delivery is significant for the parents, the legislatures, and it's really proved successful. It's what's going to help us get to the 70% or full access.
Thank you so much. We had one more question about the kindergarten bill that Representative Kevlin Warren has introduced. Stephen or Matt or anyone, do you know the number of that bill? And Deborah, who asked that question, I encourage you to go to A+'s website. Mark and Matt, if you could type that in for her, you can learn more about that bill and other K-12 education bills at the A+ Education Partnership website.
Allison, it's House Bill 208.
Thanks, Jay. All right, so House Bill 208 is the kindergarten bill. And don't forget that Senate Bill 189 is the Education Trust Fund budget bill. And if you do one thing today, please go to our website to take action. You click get involved, take action, and go ahead and contact your lawmakers, asking them to support pre-K funding in Senate Bill 189, the Education Trust Fund budget. I do want to quickly, before we leave, answer Zelinda's question, would private kindergarten qualify as having attended kindergarten? The answer to that is yes. All right, well, at this time, I'd like to open it up to Bob and Jay if they have any closing thoughts. And thank you all for attending. And I'm going to give the final words to Jay and then Bob.
Thank you, Allison. I just appreciate your willingness to put this on and organize and all the efforts that you give in your work for the Alabama School Readiness Alliance. And just want to thank all those on the call. The effort over the last 10 or 11 years has made a real difference in our state and will continue to pay big dividends down the road. So I just appreciate everybody who's involved and look forward to this year and continuing to grow the program.
Thanks, Jay. And Bob, our pre-K task force co-chair, on behalf of you and your co-chair, send us off with some final words, please.
Yes, Mike Luce would have been with us today, but he had another appointment. I echo what Jay said. This has been a long process, but it's been done correctly. It's been effective. It's actually pulled our legislators together on a very important issue, and it's laid the groundwork for us to address other issues, particularly in education and workforce development. I urge everybody to continue their participation. This isn't going to end overnight, but as we often tell the business people, that to maintain quality and to move this forward, we have to follow these procedures. You just don't develop a teacher overnight, just like you don't develop a child overnight. So we're having to deal with all those constraints, and we've developed great collaboration, as you've seen on this webinar today, but not just with those organizations, but with our universities, the two-year college system, the K through 12 system, business community chambers. So this is really a great collaboration that has opened the door for other improvements in our state. Thank you for being part of this. And thank you, Allison, you and your whole staff. Oh, wait a second. You are the whole staff. We appreciate it greatly.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great week and a great weekend. And be safe.
Thanks.